Hello, everyone. This is Edwin Olvera from Edwin Olvera Dance and Creative Services. And tonight I have a special guest, a friend of mine who I met about 3 years ago. His name is Zaq Landsberg, and we met during a Pilavolus project back in 2013, where I was one of the co-dance captains for a shadow kind of project that was going to be sent off to Abu Dhabi. And Zaq was one of the props designer for some of that work. But now, Zaq has an interesting background. He is a former student of the NYU School of Art and Design, I believe. Am I correct?
Yeah. Art and...
Okay.
Yeah, School of Art. That's what it is.
School of Art. You got your BFA there in 2007. And then if we're looking like most recently, some of the stuff that you received an award in 2014 for Emerging Artist Fellowship with a project that you created with a, what was it, a 28-foot tall Skywatch spider, right? That was in the Socrates Sculpture Park.
Yeah. I mean, well, sure. It was 28 span, leg to leg, but 18 feet tall, which is still pretty tall.
Oh, okay, perfect. And then let's see what else. In 2010, you received the Creative Team Open Door at PS1. Can you tell me a little more about that award? What did that entail?
I mean, it's not quite an award. It's more of I met the curators of Creative Time, which is they produce kind of big scale, crazy scope public art projects. I got to sit down with them and have like 10 minutes to talk. It's almost like a kind of foreshadowing or fortuitous. I talked to them about Zaqistan, and one of them was kind of into it, and one of them was totally not. And when I heeded their advice, like years later, the thing blew up. So of organizations to contact and try and work with. So.
Oh, how wonderful! And then the last thing I'll say is, in 2007, when you were finishing your degree, you received an award, or at least an honorable mention, for the International Sculpture Center Outstanding Student Achievement Award for contemporary sculpture, which is wonderful. You also done residencies in New York and also in Buenos Aires. So I'd love to hear more about that. And I guess one of the reasons why I'm reaching out to you is because I was checking my email, I think 2 days ago, late in the evening, and I saw this message that came from you saying, "Hey, this is Zaq, let you know what's going on with Zaqistan after 10 years or something." And I couldn't stop laughing in my bed. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. The amount, first of all, of recognition that you're getting for something that you're incredibly passionate about. And second of all, knowing you on a professional level and seeing how, sometimes you just got to keep making things happen and people will follow, people will come and listen, so congrats on that. So with that being said, Zaq, let's start off I'd love to know more about when you were growing up. I know you're from LA, and so when you were growing up, what were some of the early signs that people, well, maybe your parents noticed or you noticed that you were going to get into kind of like sculpture or design or creating arts and stuff like that?
Well, I've never not been making things. I mean, I don't. As a kid, I was always drawing with crayons or markers, and then I carried that through to my adolescence of drawing comic books and kind of telling stories visually. It's never. There was never a turn. I never, knew I was going to be an artist, but it's like a compulsion. I need to create things, and I feel bad when I don't.
And I know how you feel, man. I'm always creating stuff too. Always. So that's awesome. So then what about in middle school or high school? Was there, obviously you must have been gravitated more towards art than other, say, physical activities like sports, or maybe I could be wrong. Did you do any sports or physical activities when you're in high school and then also in college?
Yeah, I did play sports, and I still kind of do play sports. But making things, and also I think high school was a formative time to make things with friends of mine. So friend of mine wrote, we collaborated on a movie script once, and I've been longtime friends with, kind of guys who are now kind of big deal filmmakers and writers, but like, my bread and butter is not writing, it's not really filmmaking, but my visual sense combined with kind of their senses, working collaboratively on projects, structuring things, thinking about how things come together. That was, sort of my formative training of hanging out with friends and doing goofy projects.
Wow, wonderful. And what made you decide to go to school at NYU to study design or the arts there?
Yeah, well,
first of all, what brought you to New York?
I wanted to leave California and see something different. I wanted to kind of like, not like I have to get out, but I was sort of interested in what's on the other side of the fence. So NYU did and still does have a program that has a very heavy foundation year, where you take all studio classes the first year, so like sculpture, drawing, media arts, and then so your whole freshman year is like making things and learning how to make things. Whereas I think other schools I kind of looked at where you sort of took more general education classes and then worked your way towards a specialized major. So I was really attracted to that, and that was also kind of like formative times of like the kind of intensity of New York and the intensity of the beginning of that program really like got me working at a pace, which kind of like churned out a lot of work and a lot of ideas.
That's wonderful. And especially being in a school setting, a lot of times you have the resources to create some of these projects, or at least explore a couple ideas in their infancy stages, which then can be rolled out later on once you're done, So that's, that's pretty cool. And then, Zaq, what got you started on this path of creating your own sovereign nation in the deserts of Utah? How'd that happen?
I mean, really, it was the Bush administration who got it going. I bought the land off of eBay in the summer of 2005. And I mean, I grew up in California, and so I had grown up hiking and road tripping around the American West and such. And so when I was in school reading about Turner's frontier theory and that, that there's no more free land and what that means, and the reality of the West is really, really different. It's super sparsely populated and pretty wide open. So, I mean, that was kind of the initial impetus to like just buy the land and see what was what would happen. Kind of this Manifest Destiny type cowboys and Indians adventure. That was the first snowball that I kind of rolled down the hill. So the second one was after going into this remote patch of nothing, or wasteland, essentially. It sort of occurred to me, it was a pretty dark time politically, like Hurricane Katrina had just happened. The Iraq war was in bad shape, and I was young, I was kind of a brash 20-year-old, so I figured, not only could I run a country like better than these clowns, but I think I should. And so it started as kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke, and I was thinking about like, well, the excuse for invading Iraq was like these aerial pictures of tubes, It's like, well, I have this little spot in the desert. What if I, had some tubes and had some aerial pictures of that? Would they invade me, or what? Kind of like, I was thinking about things that look, convincing. And I was also doing kind of sculpture things based on that, of like things that look like other things. So that was kind of the next snowball that I kind of rolled down the hill.
Wow. Zach, when you first went out there in 2005, who did you go with as far as friends, or did you go solo? And because that's a hell of a trek. It's like what, 3 hours out of Salt Lake City. Is it north or is it?
It's probably more like 4.5. But
oh wow.
I traveled out there with a friend of mine. We did an internship together at a theater in LA over the summer, and so I've never gone out alone.
That'd be pretty bold.
It's dangerous to do that. Yeah, like the possibility of getting stuck or getting hurt and being trapped out there is really frightening.
I get you.
But yeah, I think my friend Jake was in for the adventure too, to kind of like to also throw this dart on the map and then see where it actually was.
Yeah, I understand that. Sorry, 1 second. There is a little bit of a side distraction going on here. So Zach, when you first arrived there, what was like the first thing that you decided to create as far as a structure or a sculpture for Zaqistan?
Well, I mean, the first thing I did is I had like a flag that I had made in high school that had a V on it in a cog, and so I like planted it. And there's a video of that happening, and kind of like staking my claim, just like setting it up of like, this is
it's like landing on the moon.
Right, and it's also like we knew we were there when the numbers on the GPS turned to what they should be, So the differentiation between my land and the rest of the desert, it was and still is pretty non-existent. It's numbers on a piece of paper, it's lines on a map, and has very little relation to like the reality of the desert. And so it's like kind of an absurd gesture a little bit, or just an absurd situation to like find my patch of nothing amidst the like sea of nothing. So that was kind of the first impulse to just claim it. But I suppose, the next one I built some robotic sentinels, and that was also like a tongue-in-cheek thing of keep the illegal American immigrants out and patrol the borders. This sort of kind of pumped up rhetoric, but something totally ridiculous because they're 50s era looking robots.
Which those robots are on your passport when people get a chance to look at the image, which I'll have links to. Yeah, it's like you have the Sentinel. Oh my God, it's pretty amazing. And I watched the video last night, which I believe it was from the art. What's it called? The Cultural Arts of Zaqistan committee or something like that.
Arts Council.
Yeah, sorry, exactly. And you made a comment in there about because everything is out and exposed to the elements, especially it's just a massive desert. So the wind blowing on the objects that you create, it ruins them or it wears them down or it takes them apart completely. But you made this comment about how even if that happens, the space that you created them on is equally powerful, and that in a sense you are making structures, but you're also making ruins at the same time of your own, Zaqistan.
Yeah, there was kind of a like aha moment, because when I first got there was nothing. And then the second time I went there was also nothing. There was no way to differentiate my land versus anything else. And I didn't quite reckon, I knew because the GPS said we were there. But after we put the robots there, you could see the glint of them in the distance. And then the way we placed them, it's like, okay, we found the highest spot. And we found that, and so the next time I went, it's like, oh, well, I recognize the place we camped, that's the Zaqopolis, and this rise over here, that's the Mount Insurmountable. And I think it was at some point, maybe the fourth trip, that my friend was like, or asked my friend, like, hey, you know, do you know where the drill is? And he was like, oh, I think it's over by Mount Insurmountable. And we sort of looked at each other. We were like, whoa, that's that's a real place. You know, it has a silly name, but
it's a real location in your sovereign nation.
yeah. So as I built more and more things, people feel comforted when they like sleep there, even though it's like just as exposed as the rest of the desert. But there's just a couple of things there. There's an anchor point, a mental anchor point, to make it feel like somewhere instead of completely nowhere.
Yeah. Again, it's like you have to have points, basically points of reference points, especially in such a vast area like that, because you could get lost. I mean, what happens when the GPS goes out? Have you ever had that happen to you when you're out there, or like your electronic devices end and you're like, oh my God, how are we gonna get back? Does that ever happen?
A little bit. I mean, I know the terrain a little bit better, you know, but it's not that hard to get turned around a little bit, you know, or when it gets dark, things seem way farther away than they are. But yeah, I mean, I kind of found, and you know, it's sort of a like side discovery, but the way, I mean, yeah, inanimate objects or things, they can't really be assigned meaning, but they kind of accrue it. Where it gathers in like for the landscape, it gathered meaning and it gathered names over time. Instead of, it's not because I assigned it a name, but it's because people started using that name and repeating it and talking about it, that became real or connected.
Now, Zach, do you know if when you're not there, are other people coming to that spot like on a yearly basis or even monthly basis?
I think it's very few. I know somebody went out there after the news piece and took pictures. But I've met a couple of people who have been out there and sort of discovered it. And they checked it out. But I don't think it's that many. It's a pretty remote spot, and it's not that easy to find. It's pretty difficult to find. So
you better be incredibly adventurous to go out there. I believe you saying something like, you know, people who tend to go out there tend to be like artists or people who, you know, like to break from the mold of. And I'm not quoting you correctly, but it's like people who are risk takers, adventurous, you know, artists, people who, you know, want to break from the mold of reality or society, venture off to a place like that, or want to be a citizen of there. I read. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. There's a kind of person when I say like, hey, do you want to go out to my country in the middle of the desert? They're like, yeah, I'm in. You know, like that's a particular kind of person.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people are so afraid of going out into nature, but this is like, you know, you're traveling halfway and more than the 3/4 away from east to west coast, and then you're going out into the desert, you know.
There's no practical reason, you know, like it's not like you're hiking to a beautiful waterfall or like some, you know, cathedral of cultural importance or what have you, you know. But yeah, people, I mean, it's not dissimilar from like kind of the people who immigrated to America and sort of left everything and you know, decided to start over, or you know, the people who went out west who like packed it all up in a wagon and were just like, all right, here it is, let's do it. I think there's I mean, it's not equivalent, but the mindset I think shares a little bit.
Yeah, that adventurous mindset, you know, willing to take a risk, try something new. Zach, here's a question. You know, what have you been? I read it in one of your things talked about that you had an interest in creating a death ray, and so I was wondering, what are some other objects that you may want to create for the following years, or even like say in 2016? You know, like what's something you would like to work on as the next sculpture or the next item that's being built in your nation?
It's hard to say. I mean, I feel like when I was younger, and also it was the Bush years, I came up with all of these, like, oh, I should make a bunch of fake tanks to make it look aerially like I have an army, or a death ray, you know, to kind of like gain some attention or what have you. But my friends, I mean, after, you know, like Obama became president, the focus of the country, or, you know, that it as you know, an against Bush project didn't make sense anymore. And so it was like, where do you go from now if it's not a reaction to something else? And that, so yeah, I've been trying to think of projects that other countries have, you know, I mean, maybe an amphitheater, perhaps my own tomb, and the environment's so harsh and things are so difficult, and it's so difficult to sustain life. It almost seems like at this point, dwellings and trying to get someplace to live would be like almost not worth it. Whereas monuments and ruins and, you know, things like tombs and that don't need to be built to live in might make more sense at this point.
I get you. The ground seems like it's pretty damn intense as far as like having structures to hold, you know, where am I trying to go? Right down the house from where I live, there is a lot of digging or excavation that's going on because they're putting up a new building for like rock climbing or whatever. And there's so much, you know, below the surface anchor points that they're doing for this building to be constructed. And so I'm thinking, even though they're small structures relative to what's being built next to my house, you know, how do you keep things from totally being blown away even while you're out there making them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, gale force winds do come through Zaqistan probably like once or twice a year, you know, and the wind speeds hit like 70 miles per hour and it just takes everything out. So the ground is as hard as concrete after a certain point. I think like a foot down, it just gets impossibly hard. So yeah, I mean, nothing out there is easy.
Interesting. So, okay, let's see. Another question I have is, as it being a sovereign country, what type of currency do you use? And if you don't, you know, what would you use? If you don't use American dollars, you know, what would you consider as a form of currency or exchange?
Well, okay, so there's two kinds of things. There's Zaqistan when we're out there. And so generally, it's only a handful of people at a time. So in terms of government, in terms of effectively like making decisions or appealing stuff, it's on a very small scale. So I mean, well, my lawyer friend was aghast that I didn't have a constitution, but I said like, well, when we're out there, if there's three of us, we sort of talk it out until we come to a decision. You know, it's more kind of a tribal, like pre-society rule situation. I mean, there are sort of things we do and ways things get made, you know, decisions get made and such. But in terms of currency, yeah, I mean, when we import things or we buy things, it's usually in dollars. We've talked about doing a currency, although I mean, you look at the Euro crisis, you look at like what the ruble's doing right now, and the implosion of like the Icelandic kroner, and then the sort of really like questioning of like, why does this currency even exist?
Yeah, exactly.
Fiat paper currency seems like a very complicated situation. So, I mean, I think that's a project I'm curious to tackle because it deals in similar ideas of currency doesn't have inherent value anymore. You can't trade it. It's not a promissory note. You can't trade it for a physical thing like gold.
Yeah.
The value is based on what someone else will pay for it. And so
maybe there's some resource there that you can, maybe some rare or scarce item in that part of the desert that is, you guys might find some value in exchange. Like, hey, if you have this many, I don't know, I'm just joking, but like cactus fruit or something, that's worth a lot. Or if you find some rare insects or something, Sounds corny, but it's like you never know. People trade animals for, some third world countries, they trade animals as a means of, like cows, or goats.
I mean, I was even thinking about an idea of, because what we do is like artwork, right? And so, in that sense of like, because partially because I have like a history of being an artist and this and that, like, if I drew something on a piece of paper, it would probably be worth, someone would pay more money to me than if you drew something on a piece of paper, probably.
That's probably so. I'm not the best drawer.
Right. It'd still be graphite on paper, know, but somebody would, like that's value that it's more than the material. In sort of it's what someone will pay for it. In the same sense that like you'll give, $1 will buy you more stuff than like one Russian ruble. Even if you say like, here's what I will accept for my Russian ruble. If no one wants to pay that, it's not worth that. So I'm thinking about what, maybe making like block prints or making almost like currency that's artwork that has inherent value in it, and sort of trying to make an equivalency of the reason, the value of art and the value of money is similar to an exchange-based value. It is reliant on what other people think to give it value.
Yeah, got it. Do you think if the time came and you actually created currency like that, would you obviously use some of your monuments? Like a lot of countries, they either have figures or they have locations. Would you use some sentinels on the cash or, the arch?
Sentinels, arch and the monuments. I'm not that into like, I'm not trying to do like a cult of personality or
of course.
I don't wear a costume. I don't play character. I think it's more about kind of perpetuating the idea.
And Zach, how many people do you think right now have either passports or citizens or residents? Is it like 200, 300? And
I would say. There's some passports in process, but there's at least 160 people who have Zaqistan passports right now. And then I'd say there's easily probably another 100 citizens who don't have passports. So 250 to 300 like Zaqistanis.
It just sounds so funny when you say it, because every time I hear a stan, you think of like near Russia or Afghanistan, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, the stands, and then you're like, this is Zaqistan, this is Utah. But it's brilliant, man. It's hey man, you have a passion and a vision, and people are following what you're doing because you do care about the quality of what's going on in your own little nation, and the fact that it really is influenced a lot by art makes a big difference, because now, as we both know, in society, art's really taken away, or it's stripped down from a lot of places.
Yeah.
And I know, I mentioned to you, I believe yesterday it was, that we were talking about like, hey, it would be cool to kind of do like some type of a festival, like a dance festival or some art festival there. Hopefully, I think I had the time in 2016, so I love to kind of put it out there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm interested in, I mean, because I'm interested in sort of what is real, how far it can bend, you know? So if you apply, you know, if I grant you citizenship and you get a passport or whatever you create becomes an example of Zaqistani art or Zaqistani dance I'm in 2016 I'm going to try and put together a Zaqistan biennial or a Zaqistan kind of art festival. And I think you'll see it in the work. I think if you put the work of 16 Zaqistanis of various different artistic media, you'll see some linkages, not necessarily in the straight content, but maybe the approach of what they're doing or what the drive is. In the same sense, like if you do a survey of American art, or put a bunch of American artists and display that somewhere, you know, you can probably discern like certain themes that run through it.
Yeah, some of it could be just by the simple fact of the consciousness of the people being around each other, you know, and maybe there's subtle influences or work ethic, or maybe they have similar people of inspiration as artists, you know, and it comes out subconsciously in their work.
Okay.
So Zach, here's a question. I believe it's like this year really got you a lot of recognition, even with the last couple months. How did that snowball effect happen? Like, you know, can you recall it? Were you like chilling someplace and all of a sudden your friend was like, hey, listen, there's an article that popped up, or hey, listen, there's a coverage on the news. What was that first domino falling over?
How did it happen, or like where was I when it happened?
Well, I guess it's two questions in one. Where were you when people were calling into you saying, Zach, you've got coverage on Zaqistan, and then, you know, what was that first domino that tipped over that caused that effect?
I mean, yeah, so there's a piece on Salt Lake local news, and Salt Lake news reporter cold called me and said he was interested in Zaqistan, and yeah, I agreed. I was like, hey, yeah, let's do something. And this was last summer, and I didn't go out to Zaqistan last summer, so I was like, I may or may not make it out, but, you know, next summer is the 10-year anniversary, so I think I'm going to do something, and if it doesn't happen now, let's stay in touch. And so we did, and I kind of laid the whole idea on him, and I mentioned that, like, it kind of needs to be handled in a delicate way. Zaqistan doesn't quite work in all contexts. And if people are ready to receive it, like, it can be really cool, but if somebody introduces me to somebody I don't know at a party saying, like, hey, Zach's this dude with his own country, then I gotta, like, backpedal and explain myself, and it sounds dumb, you know? And people are like, yeah, right. And so we did the piece, and he got it. He was really down. And I think did a pretty excellent kind of nuanced job. It's like a little bit silly, newsy, or, you know, like 10 o'clock newsy. But I think he really did a job, and so, like, it was streamed a lot, or, you know, it was broadcast live, and so on the internet. So my friends and I, we sort of, like, sat up and watched it. And I was real nervous that it would come out goofy, or, like, you know, that the point wouldn't get quite across. And I think it did, and it was really weird to see my face, like, blown up big behind these, like, newscasters at a desk, you know? Just like, a couple of weeks ago, this is just me and my buddies building stuff in the middle of the desert, you know, kind of camping, and now, like, my head is just big. And that was the first thing. And I got some emails, and I got some attention, and people seem to be cool with it. But, I mean, I think a couple of days later, I got an email from the Daily Mail, which is like a huge British tabloid, and they were asked to use some of the images on my website. So I was like, do I really want to do this? You know, I told my girlfriend, like, I mean, is this, you know, like,
yeah, exactly. You're like, how much should I tell them? Yeah, exactly. Because then, again, you don't want them to blow it out of proportion. I mean, that's the key thing. You want to have, first of all, the integrity of what you've just created, you know. And you don't want people thinking that you're some crazy dude, because you're not. You're very smart. You're very witty, and you know, you've been doing some pretty amazing work. I've had a chance to take a look at some of the other sculptures and stuff that you made. So, yeah, I feel that you're a sound mind, a person, you know, coming at this, offering a new option, something different out of pure passion, you know, not some crazy dude or something, you know.
Yeah. I'm not like some intense survivalist or.
Yeah, exactly.
Have illusions that like it's going to become this like libertarian utopia or anything like that.
Yeah. Wow. Zach, here's a couple things.
From there it just blew up and it got kind of crazy. It just got passed along, you know, hundreds of times.
You know, I was just reading the covers that they had for United Arab Emirates, because as you know, I'm going to be going there pretty soon, and you know, we both did a project out there, so it's interesting to see how they're covering it as well. It's like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how, again, your same message has been passed along, and you know, there's a little more detail here, a little bit less here, you know, but man, really, really wonderful. Zach, here's the thing, because I'm looking at also time, and I want to be, you know, respectful of your time.
Sure.
I just want to ask you a couple questions, and then I would love for you to leave some food for thought for the people who are going to be listening and watching this video. You know, what's a book or some trend or a person that really inspires you, to say currently?
Currently, I think. I mean, there's a Borges short story that like I think has a lot to do with Zaqistan and kind of like has this intense relationship, and it's called Swam Ubkar Orbis Tourist, and it's kind of about a guy who discovers these oddities in a kind of bootleg encyclopedia, and he starts looking them down, and he realizes that they're like kind of fake and inserted, and he gets obsessed with this, and he starts like researching them, and sort of realizes that there's this conspiracy of writers and artists and other people and intellectuals to insert these kind of false things into the real factual deal. And as he starts to go deeper and research all of this, he kind of realizes the line between what is fake and what's been inserted and what's not becomes really blurred. And I think towards the end, he's not sure whether anything is like real or whether it was inserted by these people. And I think there's for that, what I'm trying to do with Zaqistan and kind of most of my art is to get people to look closer, to not take things at face value. So I mean that's a little piece of something that I've been like steadily influenced by through my adult life.
Oh, Zach, 1 second. Sorry, there's a large. I'll have to edit that part out. There's a large group of people making all this noise and ruckus. I mean, I can see how that short story has really I mean, as you were describing it to me, I can almost envision how your all of your structures and sculptures have that same kind of effect out in the desert. You know, is it real objects out there, or is it just part of a terrain? And then when you come closer, they're actually real. Then they disappear into ruins, and then the new ones are formed again. So
yeah. I mean, the things I make they exist in reality. You know, they're not fake. They're not made up. They occupy physical space. So I'm less interested in putting them in a white wall gallery or in the sculpture park, but trying to put them like in reality and have them push up against, what we perceive, what is real, what we perceive as real life versus the art thing. Because I don't believe in the separation or the clear lines. Like, this is an art space, this is a real life space. I think the reality is messier than that.
That's so true. Zach, with that being said, can you let people know how they can get a hold of you? Like, if there's social media, I'm going to put it in the links because I have some of the links. I actually have a lot of the links to this stuff. But if you want people to check out, like, say, your website or your Facebook account or stuff like that people might have some questions to ask you personally, what are some good social media accounts that are linked to either Zaqistan or to your name?
Yeah, I mean, my arty art is at Zaqart.com, Zaqart, and then Zaqistan is at Zaqistan.com, Zaqistan, and contact is on both of those. But my whole deal is up on both those websites. Perfect.
And like I said, I'd love to offer, I'd love to come find a way to participate in that summer of 2016. First of all, to give support and also to help, celebrate a 10-year. My God, 10 years. That's going to be amazing. It'll be 11 years, wouldn't it? Or is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Zach, thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. And I'll also, like I mentioned to you, I'm going to post this pretty soon. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to take some of the photos that you have on your site to use them as the visual collage that be, the first thing people see when they're listening to this audio on YouTube.
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right. Thank you, Zach.
If you need high-res versions, just send me an email and let me know which ones you want. I can send those over.
I mean, as I'm looking at the time for this, I'll probably need like at least 30 different images to help capture all of this. So this is wonderful, man. Zach, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing what else you create. The last thing is there a project that you're working on right now that you would like to tell people about? Maybe they can help support or fund what you're doing, or even donate. Maybe there's resources that Zaqistan needs that you don't have. People who live in like Utah or something maybe there could be a collection point where they can donate stuff, as wood, timber, tile, anything like that. Sounds kind of far-fetched, but it's not, because it's necessary if you're building structures,
Totally. I mean, right now, buying a passport helps Zaqistan out. Or making donations. I have some big project or there's an Independence Day going on November 19th, so I think there's going to be celebrations in Amsterdam, New York City, Salt Lake City, and I think Buenos Aires and probably Los Angeles. But I think in the run up to the next thing, we're going to roll out kind of the plan for the next trip and the next show and the next thing, probably after the winter time.
Got you. Where can they buy the passport? On the Zaqistan website?
Yeah, Zaqistan.com, and then under the Department of State tab. Okay,
Department of State. All right. Well, Zach, thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I know I should be coming out to the East Coast for sure in 2016. So I'd love to, maybe have another interview in person to see what's happened or changed in your life in the last year or so.
Totally, man. Absolutely.
All right, Zach. Be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.